stiffness in your hands, if your hands hurt, especially in the morning, and it makes cooking and things really hard to get done, or maybe you're noticing some deformities like some swelling on some of the smaller hand joints, or that your fingers are kind of moving in different directions, that is your joint saying, hey, pay attention to me, I need to move. There are a couple of things that you can do to help avoid or slow the progression of some of those deformities, but also to decrease some of that stiffness and some of that pain so you can use your hands how you want to. All right, but this can be done just with two simple things. Now, when you have arthritis in any joint, movement is absolutely crucial. So that is number one, is movement. But it's not necessarily as simple as, hey, just move your hands. There are some specific movements that we need to do in order to prevent their progression. So arthritis can spread to other joints. So maybe you start to notice like a nodule or something at this top joint. It can spread down. And so we want to make sure that we are keeping every joint moving in our hands. And now our hands have so many more joints than say our knee or our hip, because you have all of these small joints in here. So we need to make sure we're moving all of those so we can keep them moving optimally. So this is one of my favorite exercises when it comes to hand arthritis. It's so simple, but it can be very effective. Now, this is going to take you through movements at each one of those joints. So you're going to hold your hand just straight out in front. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to make a tabletop. So my fingers are straight and you're bending at those knuckles. Now, what you're going to do is bend at the next joint, which is that middle joint, into what I like to call like a curl. If these bend, that's okay. Now, the next one is you're going to make a fist. And especially if you start to notice some arthritis in your thumb, I want you to cross that over as well. And you're gonna make a fist, and I want you to squeeze, and squeeze as hard as you can. You're contracting all these muscles and then relaxing and coming back out of it. So this is gonna be more helpful than say a stretch, because a stretch, you're just kind of pulling on the joints and hoping that they stay that way, but then they'll just tighten back up. They're tight for a reason. And so we have to use that strength in our hands. So squeeze it in an isometric way where you're squeezing it but not really moving. Hold for about 3 to 5 seconds, and then you're going to come out of this. So you're going to open up, so move your thumb out of the way, and then you're going to come to that curl, you're going to come to that tabletop, and then come all the way up. Tabletop, curl, fist, cross that thumb over, squeeze, bring that thumb out, come back up. So if you can run through this like 8 to 10 times, that would be ideal, especially if you're watching TV or just kind of need something to do and you need to do something with your hands. This is an awesome way to do this. Now, another thing you can do is actually open up your fingers this way, because with most hand movements, we're not necessarily moving through the full range of motion. Like when you're opening something or when you're, picking up something, you kind of move through the half ranges of motion. How often do we really spread our fingers out as wide as we can? Not super often, unless you're playing sports or something like that. So it's key to bring these to their full range of motion. So finger splaying is another one. Doing this 10 to 20 times. And I want you to really think about kind of flicking them open, putting some power behind it. That's gonna help those muscles really start to loosen up. Now, another one you can do, especially if you're starting to feel it in your thumb, is what it's called opposition. But essentially you're taking your thumb to each one of these fingers and then coming back. So you're just tapping. All these are very simple, but they can be very effective. Again, we don't necessarily come into this movement very often during the day, so being deliberate about these movements is absolutely key. So that is another one, and then you can bring them all together and then come open. So between the movement at all the joints that we were talking about in the beginning, to the finger splays and putting some power behind it, and then also just keeping sure that you're moving and activating that thumb a little bit too, those can be very helpful. Now, the next thing, especially if you're thinking, okay, hey, this movement is awesome, but when I wake up in the morning or when my hands are feeling really stiff, those movements might be kind of hard. And that's okay. So one of the best things you can do, especially if you are feeling like your hands are super stiff or they're just not moving, is heat. Heat can be so incredibly powerful when it comes to hand arthritis. So there are a couple ways that you can use heat. One super simple one is when you wake up in the morning, run your hands under warm water, or you can put warm water in a bucket or a bowl and just kind of let them soak. And it doesn't need to be long. I mean, if you want to do 2 to 3 minutes, or if you want to go up to 5, 10, obviously you just want to make sure that the water's not too hot and you're not burning yourself, but that can really be effective. And especially if you have a bowl or something where you're soaking your hands, you can start to do some of those movements where you're coming into a fist. You can start to move just like how we would hop into a pool for knee arthritis or hip arthritis. It's the same thing. Your hands can go swimming and they can do the movements in the water. They can move in different ways. So that is one way that you can do that. Now, another way is compression gloves. Now, compression isn't exactly heat, but it does produce some of the same effects. So they do make hand compression gloves, kind of like right here. You put those on and it almost makes you feel like your hands are getting a hug. And when that happens, it can help to reduce pain, because pain and compression are felt with some of the same receptors. And so when we add compression, it takes away some of that pain and can help you move more easily. The idea is of both heat and compression is that it makes movement easier. Heat induces relaxation, making movement easier because of the stiffness reducing. The compression gloves can help to reduce pain, making movement easier in theory. And so either one of these two things you can use, I have some people that wear like winter gloves to induce some of that heat. You can just use heating pads, whatever it is, and whatever you have available to you. Add some sort of heat or compression to make movement easier. Some people wear those gloves throughout the day. Some people just kind of need them in the morning or at night whenever you are flaring up the most. But there are things you can do if you have hand arthritis, and the most important thing to prevent the progression of it is to keep your hands moving. You have to focus sometimes on every day, especially if you notice that your hands are maybe progressing a little bit more quickly, or you're starting to notice that those nodules keep getting a little bit bigger. We have to keep our hands moving to help promote that blood flow, cycle out those those inflammatory cells, bring in some of those good anti-inflammatory cells, and make our hands feel better. If this video is helpful, if you wouldn't mind hitting that red subscribe button below, so that way we can help so many more people that are out there with hand arthritis. Thank you so much for watching, and go ahead and put a comment down below. I want to hear from you. If you have hand arthritis, what has worked for you? And if you've tried any of these movements or compression or heat, let me know. All right, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.